With this being the first episode, it's going to be a little front-loaded. Let it be known, I'm not a huge fan of mainstream American comics. In fact, until relatively recently, I didn't know that unless the book was published by Marvel or DC, it was considered indie. To me, indie is some obscure hole-in-the-wall company pumping out titles that most fans will probably never hear of. To me, multi-million-dollar companies like Image are not indie. Back in the early 90s, when they first started, maybe, but they quickly surpassed that description. I am a manga man. When I hear the term American comics, like most people, I think superheroes. In my mind, I see the American comics as taking a medium and turning it into a genre. My first true experience with comic books was with manga. Before that, it was the Sunday paper comic strips or meeting up at a friend's house before we headed out somewhere, and I might see a comic book sitting somewhere in their room, and I only had enough time to flip through the pages and scan it briefly, not actually read it, coupled with the fact that I grew up in the middle of nowhere, and there were no comic book shops to speak of at the time, and the internet was still yet to become what it is today, or the fact that even if there was a comic book shop in the area, my parents would have never taken me or my brother to it, let alone be willing to shell out the cash for any of this stuff. I didn't get my hands on my first comic book until I was 14 at a chance outing at a Suncoast. Remember those? So I started thinking, there are more than enough people reviewing mainstream comics as they come out. What if I went back to some of the older stuff, the unknown stuff, to bring to you the stories that may have been forgotten, the stories maybe you never heard of, the stuff that may have fallen through the cracks, to see if the book was popular and has stood the test of time, or was it overhyped? Did it deserve better than what it got? I have a couple of rules for this show. 1. Anything I consider to be a mainstream comic must be at least 5 years back from current year. Indie titles, there will be no time limit. Why am I going to make a title that will probably have no promotion weight? 2. Books must be in trade paperback form unless they were initially a one-shot issue or other extenuating circumstance. I hate single monthly issue floppies. I don't get enough chunk of a story from them. So that leaves us where to start. So I figure I will start at the beginning with the first true comic I ever read. This is Mobile Suit Gundam Blue Destiny. So what is Mobile Suit Gundam Blue Destiny? Mobile Suit Gundam Blue Destiny is a manga adaptation of the series of Sega Saturn games by How Manga magazine. Released in Japan in 1997 and originally meant to adapt the entire series of games, the publisher folded and the adaptation was never completed. However, this didn't stop Mix Entertainment from picking up the title and translating it into English. Never heard of Mix Entertainment, you say? If you're a manga fan that was on the scene back in the early to late 2000s, you came across them just under a different name. That's right, Mix Entertainment was the forerunner of Tokyo Pop. In 1997, its founder, Stuart Levy, aka DJ Milky, and I'm not joking here, this is the man's actual pen name, and I just have to ask myself, why would you pick that? Decided to change the name to Tokyo Pop. The history of Tokyo Pop, in and of itself, is a whole other video. So, back on task. The manga was translated and released stateside on July 1st, 1999. If you look at the spine of the book, this is from the dark days of manga before Tokyo Pop started to introduce their 100% authentic manga line and stopped flipping the pages to a Western-style format. So, with the history lesson out of the way, let's get into the story. We open with Angel Wings here issuing an ominous warning, and then cut to the group of mobile suit pilots that we will be following for the story. Maureen here, the squad's rear support, has them sound off as they exit the back of the Medea, only to have the manga restate who they are, at least the important ones, that as they descend into an enemy Zeon base. They dispatch a couple of Zeon mobile suits and seem to take combat relatively lighthearted because, combat is a generally enjoyable experience, with Phil here indulging in his hobby of collecting enemy mobile suit guns. Meanwhile, Sam here gets himself into a bit of a pickle and calls for help. It's so cute when your crack combat troops are useless. They run off and start a montage of combat scenes as they continue engaging enemy mechs, and narration starts to explain that we are at the start of Operation Odessa in the Gundam timeline, and this is the turning point of the 1-year war, and the Earth Federation is starting to gain the upper hand, and the key factor to this is that fact that the Federation has finally been able to deploy its own mass-produced mobile suits, the RGM-79 GM. General Motors is gonna sue somebody. Quick aside, I have heard 2 pronunciations for the name of this mech, GM and Jim, and I just had to make the joke. I know that the earlier translations, they translated it as GM, and the newer ones is Jim. Apparently, from what I've heard in the lore, the Jim pronunciation is supposed to be a nickname, but in general, all the newer stuff just pronounces it as Jim. And if you don't like the joke, you can bite me. The manga continues the monologue and further explain that while the Federation now has their own mobile suits in large quantity, they still lack tactical, strategic, and other practical pilot experience in utilizing these new weapon platforms. That is where we bring in nameless, faceless pilots sitting in a new experimental mobile suit. And you know, when you're introduced like this, it's always going to end well for you. We also get our first look at Captain Alf Sharma, the head of this experimental project. And that is when our experimental new mobile suit activates itself and starts off for the battle under the command of the exam system. A subordinate asks Alf here if he should force shut down the mobile suit, to which Alf tells him no, this is exactly what he's been waiting for, and to continue the test, thus revealing himself to be the amoral, bordering on evil douchebag he is, if you couldn't tell by this face to begin with. With the battle drawing to a close, our crack team get a radio transmission about an out-of-control mobile suit heading their way. And I mean, this mech just owns, taking out Fetty suit after Fetty suit, and through the smoke and the fire, they get their first good look at the mysterious mobile suit. And then they engage it, only to be completely outclassed in just about every way. Kajima here orders them to open fire, and is shocked to see the suit protecting its head unit rather than the cockpit area. See? It worked out just fine for Nameless here. Oh. Alf, monitoring this, lets us know that the suit only has 60 seconds of runtime left, but it's the strongest it's been to date and won't lose, and that it's time to find a new pilot, by which I think he means a naive, expendable, and unwittingly easily manipulated pawn. Same thing, right? Kajima, his suit about to fail, realizes he needs to end the fight now, and is able to grab a heat hawk from one of the downed Zakus and lays the whack down on the mysterious suit, and at that moment gets a vision of angel wings. Kajima comes to be informed that the mysterious mobile suit wiped out the whole battery on its own, but ran off after Kajima hit him, and that their pickup is inbound. We then jump to a Xeon unit in the field led by Major Nimbus Skratanzin, being given intel on the mysterious suit, and he announces it's time to punish a traitor, and that the code name for this operation will be Blue Destiny. We open Chapter 2 with our mysterious mobile suit returning heavily damaged, and Alf wondering if his calculations were wrong, and get the reveal that the mech is actually called Blue Destiny. So, Blue Destiny is the name of the new mobile suit, and the new Xeon operation. Okay. The ground crew starts examining and taking stock of the damage, with Alf left to ponder if the exam system has put more stress on the suit than expected. He is then informed that the cockpit had been sliced open, with the ground crew surmising it must have been done by a heat hawk. Alf then begins to laugh maniacally at what he sees as a weak attempt and the pathetic threat a heat hawk poses to Blue Destiny, and decides he has to find the pilot who did it because he will be the ideal pilot for Blue Destiny. We then jump to Blue Destiny calling out to Kajima, to then have it revealed that it's actually Angel Wings calling him, telling him that she will be the one to judge him, free his heart, and save him. Kajima then jerks awake, revealing it was just a dream. Or was it? Blue type! Blue type! Maybe. They land at the same base that the crew of the Blue Destiny is pulling into. They tell the gate guard not to ask any questions he doesn't want to know the answers to, if you catch my drift. Alpha looks over and sees Kajima's corps of trash GMs and asks if they're stationed at the base. The guard tells him no and says that they're the guinea pigs, the nickname for the experimental corps, a group given the latest model GM mobile suits to take into and test in actual combat, and that they're more like a human experiment, a comment Alf seems to like. I wonder why. Meanwhile, Kajima reports to his superior about the blue GM they encounter and wants to be able to investigate the situation, but his superior isn't sure about his claim and wants more evidence before he makes a decision on the matter. We then see Nimbus and his crew undercover spying on the base, and Cloud Boy decides not to send his men in just yet, but a group of Zeon soldiers from C Command. While this is going on, Kajima's corps is delivered a new group of upgraded GM models. They then get a call from their support Maureen, realizing that they've been hacked and that all their data and evidence on the mysterious blue GM is gone. I just love the responding comment the characters have to the situation, and I read, "Someone must have done this on purpose. I guess it would have been an illegal access from outside." No shit, Pilot Sherlock. That's usually what happens when you get hacked. Top-notch crew here. Top-notch. The base then becomes aware of the incoming attack from the sea and launches its mobile suits to defend and counter. The Zeon Hygog springs forth from the depths and begins thrashing the base's mobile suits. And it was good. Kajima wants to launch and help the base's soldiers, but Phil is against using an untested mobile suit in combat. But I thought that was your whole job. Kajima replies they have no choice, and over the intercom, the base orders them to aid in the defense effort. It would appear that they really didn't have a choice. The Hygogs, however, are looking for a new model mobile suit. Kajima and team ambush the Zeons and drive them back as Cloud Boy's men watch, commenting that they didn't see the blue mech that they're after and that they'd love to go up against these Federation pilots, and then reveal themselves to be Dom pilots as they suit up to go into battle, with the leader of this subgroup called Abraham, even though he looks more like a Booth to me, but potato, potato. And they have the standard Gundam franchise's air of them commenting that this will probably be their last battle anyway. The team is attempting to refit when they're informed that another enemy unit is inbound, but it's only 3 units. Would feel like, if it's only 3, they don't need our help. And Maureen like, the enemy units are with Kajima, interrupting and guessing Doms. Dun dun dun. The Doms call out Kajima and his men, who respond by blowing one of the Doms' arms off, and the battle is on. As it continues, a supply Medea is inbound, asking to land, and is told to stay back while the attack is underway. The fighter escort asks if they need backup and is told not at this time, to which she tells them backup is on the way. Way to obey orders. Come on, girlie, don't you know it's called a cockpit for a reason? You're just there for show. Abraham, thanks Kajima for giving him a challenge for his last fight, and states that this victory is his last prize won on Earth. Red flag, anyone? Anyone? The Doms surround Kajima's team, and Sammy and Phil realize that they have 1 ammo clip left apiece and are low on fuel. Hold on. Stop the manga. How are you low on fuel? In this era of Gundam, your mech is nuclear powered. You should be good for years. And it's a brand new reactor with a full charge. Anyway, moving on. About to be destroyed, Jet Girl swoops in and destroys 2 of the Doms, leaving Kajima to deal with Abraham. I'll get it right eventually. Or he'll die. Sammy and Phil are then wondering what has become of Kajima. Maureen can't confirm if he is still alive or not, and then Jet Girl chimes in with, Kajima, do you mean you, Kajima? It's like, yes, you, it's really you. Kajima and Abraham do the standard manga sword fight final strike pose as Jet Girl zips by and Booth, he explodes and he dies. Oh, I guess it was the latter that happened. And the battle ends with Jet Girl meeting back up with Kajima. Why do I get the feeling that this is going to turn into a childhood friend trope? Anyway, we go back to Cloud Boy carving a topless bust of Angel Wings as he is informed that all of his men have been lost. And he announces that he is going to launch in his suit, iFlighty. And we get the reveal that Angel Wings' actual name is Marion, and Cloud Boy is there to bring her other half back. We now flash back to Nimbus and his first introduction to the iFlighty suit and Angel Wings before she became Angel Wings, and that her mind is the one inside the exam system. We move back to the aftermath of the battle, seeing Kajima and the others sifting through the wreckage of the base and destroyed mobile suits as the crew for Blue Destiny is finishing up its repairs and preparing to leave. Jet Girl lands and heads off to find Kajima. This is where we get a bit of backstory on Kajima. He and Jet Girl used to be fighter pilots together, and then he transferred over to mobile suits. They discuss the old days, and she talks about how she feels like she's at her limit. We see Alf talking with Kajima's commander, convincing him to let him have him for his program, as Kajima watches Jet Girl take off and leave. Right after, the Medea carrying Blue Destiny takes off, and Kajima and Unit head out on patrol, only to have Maureen tell them to turn back because the Medea and fighter planes have been attacked and shot down. They get to the crash site to find the Medea surrounded by Zaku's, and the entire crew is dead except for Alf, who happened to be in Blue Destiny's cockpit at the time. Jet Girl finds her way into the wreckage and meets up with Alf, and sees Blue Destiny and remarks about how the enemy mobile suit that shot them down was also blue, and Alf realizes that the enemy's exam unit is there. Jet Girl says to Alf that he seems to know more than what he's letting on, and he tells her he can't say, and she is fine with it. That there is someone who understands classified. One of the Zaku starts to rip into the fuselage of the Medea. They radio back that they've captured a new Federation model, with Cloud Boy hiding just off in the distance, and decides he can't let even members of his own side know about the exam units and plans to kill them. But Kajima and team show up at that moment and begin popping off Zakus. Alf and Jet Girl watch as Kajima goes to town on the enemy suits, and Alf comments on how the enemy won't be able to touch him, and Jet Girl wants to know how Alf knows Kajima, and he just says that he loves him from afar, with Jet Girl telling him that's a sick thought. Alf then tells her they need to get Blue Destiny ready for battle, and that it's their only chance for survival because the standard Xeon units aren't the real problem. The Zaku's retreat and run into iFlighty, and they ask Cloud Boy for help, and he calls them losers and that they are an embarrassment for running away, and kills them for it, even though he was planning on killing them anyway for simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time. After that, Nimbus turns his attention to Kajima and crew, quickly dispatching Phil and Sammy. We cut back to Alf, trying to get Blue Destiny up and running, but he can't and reluctantly comes to the conclusion that the mobile suit itself is refusing to activate on its own accord. You may want to contact NERV. I heard they've had some experience with unruly semi-sentient mechs. This is when Jet Girl runs off to help Kajima, who in all respects is actually holding his own one-on-one in an outclassed GM mobile suit. But Cloud Boy finally gains the advantage and pins Kajima up against the fuselage of the downed Medea. As Cloud Boy closes in, Jet Girl has been able to get her own downed fighter back up. It's missing a wing, but the rest of it looks pretty good. Skims the surface and goes full kamikaze. But it hardly even scratches iFlighty. This apparently wakes up Blue Destiny and it starts firing through the fuselage, going berserk. Again, Captain Alf, you really need to call NERV. They can help you with this problem. Blue Destiny tears its way out of the Medea and goes all in on iFlighty, which this is what Cloud Boy has been waiting for, but Command orders him to retreat because more enemy troops are inbound. But he's like, "Nah, I got this. Don't worry about it, bro." To which Command replies, "Yes, you are. We're sending you home." And he pulls back. Alf comes to the conclusion that Blue Destiny wasn't out of control, but being piloted by a remote somehow. Because throughout the whole story, it's implied that he built the damn thing, so he should probably know how. Not to mention, he knows there's a human mind imprisoned in the damn machine. This is the heart and soul of how his operating system works. But no, it's probably just some kid with an RC controller from Radio Shack messing with him. Kajima then starts looking for Jet Girl, but everyone else is convinced there is no way that she survived, and she lives. After they pack her away on the medevac, Alf introduces himself as Kajima's new commanding officer. Kajima is now the pilot of Blue Destiny and is point on the Federation's attack on Zeon's California base, their last stronghold on Earth. He, however, is still catching flashes of angel wings. Alf tells him he can quit if he wants, but Kajima wants to push the limits. As dawn breaks, the main Federation force enters into the battle. Sammy and Phil meet up with Kajima, but he tells them to stay back, that Blue Destiny is reading them as enemy. He starts to get flashes of angel wings again, and the phrase, "punish their crimes with death." Cloud Boy enters into the fray, telling Kajima that the power to punish everyone is the true power of the exam, and issues a challenge to continue where they left off, and that he is taking Angel Wings back. They begin to fight, and we get a flashback of Angel Wings and what happened to her during the development of the exam program. And we see that the professor in charge went insane over a fear of the new types taking over, and Angel Wings' soul ended up locked inside exam. She calls out to Kajima to help her destroy the exam system. He tells her that she won't survive, and she begs him to set her free, and he agrees, and both iFlighty and Blue Destiny are nearly destroyed. Kajima comes to in the wrecked Blue Destiny with Angel Wings floating in front of him. She thanks him and tells him that both her physical and spiritual halves are now gone. She's about to fly off when Kajima tells her not to cross over just yet, but to give him a chance to save her. She agrees, and we end with Kajima expressing that he now has a real reason to fight. So with that, we have a closing satisfying enough and open-ended enough should it had continued. When I first read this book back in the day, I loved and consumed everything Gundam. Reading it again for this review, I'll say it has aged well, and if you're a hardcore Gundam fan, it's a nice little piece to go through with just about all the standard trappings of the franchise. If you're a casual manga reader or a mech fan, it's a nice way to kill an hour or so, and I'd recommend checking it out. As for next time,